Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2025 Farmers DFS Tactics show. We have everything you need this evening to finalize and optimize your lineups. We've got the ownership projections. We're going to take a quick look at the forecast. Everything you need to dominate the slate this week for the Farmers at Torrey Pines. I'm quite excited to reveal my rankings and go through the price board. I have a 6K play in my top 10 this week. So excited for that. And of course, at the end of the show, we'll have the continuing 2025 picks challenge between Gabe and I. He has taken the lead by one after my disaster of a week last week at the Amex. So I'm going to try to get back on the right track. We're going to try to help you out as well. Let's get into it. Let's figure out our strategies and our tactics for the 2025 Farmers. We are going to start, as we always do, with the super forecast here at Windfinder. And on top of that, I've got a poll question for this evening. Not in a rush like I was last week. I know I skipped through the intro. Just quite excited. I feel pretty good about this week. So the poll question for this evening, pretty simple, pretty easy, or at least easy for me to create because there's 4 10K players. So of the 4 10K players, which are you going to most avoid? I guess let me change which player are you most avoiding this week, because you can avoid all 4 of them really. But let me post that poll question. Which 10K player are you most avoiding this week? Is it Ludwig Aubert? Is it Hideki? Is it Tony Finau? Or is it Sung Jae? So feel free to jump into chat, make your voice heard. Please fill out the poll question. Make your selection on there. Would love to hear from you all. Not a whole lot has changed in terms of the forecast from last night. Tomorrow looks extremely calm. Just very, very little wind, pretty cool, pretty chilly. High does not even reach 60, but very little wind. So tomorrow looks fantastic. Now, Thursday, the wind does look like it picks up a little bit in the afternoon. No real wave stacking or wave advantage that we can target, considering the players go off in one continuous wave. Instead, it is a course stack that you would probably want to prefer. And in this case, it seems as if you would want to target the players that are starting on the North Course tomorrow. Generally, that has been what has led to the most wins, is, at least in terms of DFS, your players will play the easiest course, the North Course, on the easier day of the wind, and literally everybody's holding on for dear life on the South Course, even when the wind is down, generally speaking. So in the past, you have wanted to stack the easier day with the North Course. So in this case, with this forecast, considering the wind projects to pick up on Thursday, looks like the easier day appears to be Wednesday. You would want your players playing on the North Course on the easier day tomorrow. So that's what it appears to be as of right now. Hey, good evening, Phil. Thanks for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Good to see you this evening. I hope your American Express went a whole lot better than mine. I haven't seen you this week up until now. Hopefully you're ready for the Farmers. How do you think it's going to play? I'm assuming that might be your answer on the poll question. If you haven't, please fill that out and let me know what your thoughts are in chat. It was good to see you this evening. We're going to try and bounce back after a pretty disastrous American Express, at least for yours truly. Again, quick thing about the weather. If this holds and the wind does pick up a little bit on Thursday, you would want your players playing the easier course on the easier day. That's generally what has been winning at Torrey Pines. So it looks like, based on this forecast, you would want to target the players that are starting on the North course tomorrow. I didn't put any emphasis into this when building my lineups, but it is something I want to explain to you that when there's been a wave advantage or a course advantage in the past, it has generally been the easier day, easier course players that get through. Some people have the opposite narrative, wanting to go the south when it's less windy. I'm with you on the north. That's exactly what the thought process is there. And to be honest, I used to be of the mindset of the prior mindset that you mentioned, where you'd want to play the south course on the less wind and the north course on the windy. But thinking about it, if there's very little wind on the north course and it's very easy, that gives you the best opportunity to go low. And I mean, go very, very low. And so I have kind of changed, after having done this now a few years, I have actually changed my opinion on this to where I would want my players to go out on the north course tomorrow and just go as low as possible, hang on for dear life on Thursday, cut day. So I'm with you on that. I've heard both sides of the argument. It's just two different ways to look about it. Are you more aggressive in wanting to get as many birdies as possible, or are you more conservative and you want to avoid the bogeys? I don't think there's an extremely clear cut right or wrong answer to that. It's just your approach and your mindset toward it, because there are times where you, in these rotational courses, rotational events, that you'd want to play the hard course on the less wind. But generally speaking, Torrey Pines has been, you want to play the north when it's easy. That way you can just go low, because the south is so very difficult. Zooming out here, we'll take a look at Friday. Very little wind. Looks like it is very similar to Wednesday. And then Saturday looks like it's going to be really, really tough. Saturday looks like the south course is going to show its teeth quite a bit. So we could be in for a U.S. Open-esque style finish on Saturday, where par, maybe even +1 coming in on the back nine might win it, considering how tough the south course is. So there's a look at the forecast. Again, two different ways to think about it, but I am generally of the mindset that you want to go and get your players out on the easy course on the easy day. So based on this forecast, you probably give a slight to moderate advantage to the players playing on the starting on the north course tomorrow. With that, we're going to go to Fantasy National. Not going to do anything with the wind. There's very little wind in the forecast on 2 of the days. Most of Thursday looks pretty calm. It just kind of picks up late. So instead, let's take a look at long courses just very, very quickly. And this is going to be a common theme tonight as we go through the mixed condition model and later on. This long course filter. So when courses are or have been long in the past year plus, your top performers have been Ludwig Aubert, Hideki, Taylor Pendrith, Max Homa, Thomas Dietrich, Shane Lowry, Justin Lauer, Kevin Tway, Aiden Springer, and Sung Jae. Do note, at least from last night, I did not have confirmation, at least during the show, but Akshay Bhatia is not playing. He is out. And then earlier today, Harry Hall withdrew as well. So make sure all of the players that have withdrawn are out of your lineups, starting with Colin Morikawa, Nikolai Horigard, Tyler McCumber, Pearson Coody replaced one of them. Then Akshay Bhatia, Harry Hall. I think there was one more. and it's escaping me. But make sure all of those players are out of your lineups, as they are not playing the Farmers this week. Enough of that. Let's just get into the mixed condition model and then go through the price board and figure out how we want to build our lineups this week. The model starts with off the tee, and off the tee on long courses. You'll see that I used 2024 and what little of 2025, at least long courses wise. This would be just the Century. But 5% off the tee. Look, Torrey Pines is very, very demanding. Very demanding off the tee. Surprisingly, the fairways haven't really mattered all that much. It's mainly about the distance, in which you see at the bottom of your screen there. I've got some distance factored in as well. But the rough is pretty thick. Generally speaking, professionals are going to be better out of the fairway than the rough. So I just wanted to see the combination of off the tee, distance and accuracy. The off the tee metric, 5% went on long courses. You could argue for difficult. However, with Wednesday and Friday's forecast being so very calm, I don't think the South course will be difficult on those 2 days with the wind being down. Now, Thursday and definitely Saturday, I can see it being difficult. So you can make that argument to use the difficult filter. But the one thing we do know about Torrey Pines, no matter what the wind is doing, is it's going to be long. So that's why I used that filter. And that's really why I used that filter throughout the entirety of the mixed condition model. I just was not confident at the end of the day thinking that Torrey Pines was going to play difficult every single round based on the forecast. Now, if it does, I might be a little weak, but I'll get into that. 15% in strokes gained approach, and I want you to notice I'm only using 2025 statistics for the approach. Main reason being, when we went through the data dive last night, we saw that at least for these prior winners, the former champions, they had all played essentially, except for Jason Day in 2018. 2018's winner, Jason Day, had not played before coming to Torrey Pines, but every other champion from 2017 to last year and Matthew Pavone had played the Century, the Amex, the Sony. They'd at least played once during the new season. And not only that, they had some pretty good iron form coming in. So that's why the very small sample size here, and that's why you'll see some players just don't have any stats in the mixed condition model when we move over there. The biggest name, I should say, is Justin Rose, former champion here at Torrey Pines, hasn't teed it up yet in the new season. So some of his stuff will be blank because he just hadn't played in 2025. But that's the reasoning behind only going back to this year's Century, is that generally players who the players who won the Farmers have been in very, very good recent form. So that's why the focus there, and of course approach, one of the probably the best or key shot type here at Torrey Pines. So 15% there. Same reasoning for around the green. Just looking at 2025, need players who have knocked the rust off, and C has been good around the green lately. Around the green, 5%. It's going to be important because the South courses greens are small. You're coming in to them with long irons. Players are just going to miss greens, so they just are, and they're going to have to rely on their short game to contend. So 5% around the green, 15% on POA and putting. If you wanted to get real specific, you could have made the argument to just look at putting at Torrey Pines, because these greens aren't overly complicated. They're generally pretty flat, not a whole lot of undulation or breaks in them. It's just the fact that they're POA, and POA gets very bumpy as the grass grows throughout the day. It is a difficult surface to putt. So 15% on POA putting. This includes Torrey Pines, obviously, goes back to, or includes Pebble Beach. Those are pure POA Anna greens, and Riviera, the host of the Genesis. Those are pure POA Ana greens. And I went back all the way to the start of 2022. I generally don't like going back that far, but to make the data set statistically significant, meaning players have enough rounds to make it worthwhile to look at, I had to go back that far. So 15% in putting, even though it's not a focal point here, generally speaking, the players that have played well here generally putt just POA really well. And a lot of that has to do with the California narrative that's going around. You know, the Sahith Tagalas, the Max Homas, Mav McNeelys, these guys that have played in California, that POA is so prevalent out there, they're just used to putting on it. So I added a little bit of extra percentage here to account for that. I see your comment, Phil, about rye. I don't hate that. I'm just waiting to give you my opinion on that when we get to the price board. I'm trying to get through the mixed condition model. But 15% in putting, 5% in driving distance. Again, fairways just haven't mattered that much here at Torrey Pines. Yes, you'd like to be in them, but generally it's just about distance. You got to have some length here to contend with these prevalent 480 and 90-yard plus par 4s, 600-plus yard par 5s. You just got to have some distance, some firepower off the tee. So looking at distance, only 5%. I didn't want to put too much emphasis into this because players like Patrick Reed, Justin Rose used to hit it far when he was younger, but bombers haven't exclusively won. I mean, Pavone's not a bomber in the traditional sense, so you don't have to have it. It's just generally useful to have. 10% in greens, for the same reason that I included around the green. I want to see just players who are adept at hitting greens in regulation. If they're going to hit greens, they're generally going to gain a whole lot on the other players in the field. So if a player is very, very good at just hitting greens, there's a lot to gain there. 10% greens gained on long courses. 5% each, birdies are better, and bogey avoidance on long courses. Generally, I like to use the difficult or easy relative to par filter when talking about scoring, but again, just wasn't confident that Torrey Pines South was going to play difficult all 3 or all 4 days. So I went with the long course on birdies are better and bogey avoidance. Now, this doesn't really apply to the North Course. Now, birdies are better does, but not the filter. Bogey avoidance definitely applies to Torrey Pines South. Players avoiding bogeys there are going to be really, really good. Rounding out the mixed condition model, 10% par 3, total par 3s, pretty even split among par 3s, at least on the South Course. The North Course, they're generally shorter, but they are the hardest holes on that course. So par 3, 10% total par 3s, 10% on the long par 4s, 450 to 500. So prevalent at at Torrey Pines South. 6 of the 10 par 4s on the South Course measure to this length. So players are going to have to be very good from this length, or play those length of holes very well. 10% par 5s. And then we didn't talk a whole lot about it, but we saw it Sunday night in the course breakdown on Fantasy National. 3-putt avoidance. And using the same filter as I did for the putting, going all the way back to 2022 on POA Ana, 3-putt avoidance. Going to be a pretty big deal. Even though these greens are small, it's POA. POA is difficult to putt. So let's see who can avoid 3 putts. So there's a look at the mixed condition model. Again, as I said, if the South Course does indeed play difficult all 4 rounds, I will be weak to that. I wasn't confident. That's why I'm using the long course filter on all of these. I'll tell you right now, I think I'm a little light on around the green. I spent most of last night and early today with 10% in around the green, but I had to cut 5% to add something, and I honestly I don't remember what, but to get all of the metrics that I wanted to put in the mixed condition model, I had to drop drop the around the green to 5%. I do think I'm a little light here. I think around the green is going to play a pretty integral part. You can maybe argue to cut putting down to 10%. Sure, I just went with the around the green. Otherwise, feel pretty good about this mixed condition model. I've had some success at this tournament in years past. We're going to try to duplicate that. So we'll now move to Microsoft Excel, the reveal of my rankings. And for your information, if you are a new viewer, or as a reminder, if you're a returning viewer, my rankings are based on 3 criteria. The FNGC rank, which is a numerical ranking given by Fantasy National based on the model that we just covered, the metrics, percentages, and whatnot in there. Course value is an attempt at giving a player a numerical value, the lower the number the better, at how well they have played that tournament. Usually I say course, but that tournament in the past 5 years. So players like Max Homa, very solid. Hideki has been very good here, whereas players like Ben Griffin have not been very good. Harris English, I believe, is 0 for 2, missed the cut both times. So the lower the number, the better on how well they have played that tournament. And then we are playing DFS. We're trying to find unique options. So projected ownership, and these are per Fantasy National. Projected ownership is also a factor into my rankings. My rankings for the Farmers this week go as such. Max Homa is my number 1 player, getting quite a bit of help because he seems to be a slight pivot in the 8Ks. Also, the exceptional course value. So number 1, Max Homa, and then literally the four 10K players round out my top 5. Ludwig, Hideki, Sungjae, and Tony Finau round out the top 5. McNeely, Sam Stevens, 6,700 Nate Lashley, 8th in my rankings. Keegan 9th, and Sahith Theegala round out my top 10. All right, let's talk about the surprise, Nate Lashley. I didn't think he was going to... I figured he would be high. I didn't think he would jump into my top 10. He's very unique. Probably no surprise there, so he's getting helped with that. Look, he finished 3rd here last year. Finished 3rd. He's got some success around Torrey Pines. He also didn't rate out the worst, top 25 in terms of just the model. His irons so far in 2022, despite the fact that he doesn't have any high successful finishes. He missed the cut last week at the Amex. I think he was 30-something at the Sony. But the irons have been good. He's gained in both of those tournaments. You see the putting on Poa annua, and not just Torrey Pines. Sorry, I'm centering this camera. Not just at Torrey Pines, but he has had success at Torrey Pines putting. Putting at the Genesis when he's played. Putting at Pebble. He's been very good on Poa annua. Not, the most adept at hitting greens. He hadn't been the best on par 5s, which he'll have to clean up. But, for 6,700, you're getting a guy that's top 10 in putting, 4th in these in total par 3s last year. 3-putt avoider, bogey avoider. Lots of like with Nate Lashley. Everybody else here probably no surprise. Maybe Sam Stevens, but I'll get to him when we go through the price board because we'll be talking about Sam Stevens a lot tonight. Let's sort on the price board, figure out where at least the members at Fantasy National seem to be going, and then how we can maneuver around them. So in the 10Ks, the crux of the poll question tonight, in the 10Ks we have 4 players. We have Ludwig Aubert at 10.8, Hideki at 10.7, Tony Finau at 10.2, Sungjae at 10,000 even. You see all 4 of them rated in my top 5, Max Homa being my number 1 player. So it's going to be really hard to separate these four, at least in terms of rankings. Now, I can tell you right now, I am completely off of one of these players. Might surprise you who it is, but I'm completely off of Tony Finau. Not simply because he's the lowest of these four, and it's not because of the missed cut, because Sung Jae missed the cut last week as well. I'm off of Tony Finau for one reason, really. So let me bring us back to Fantasy National, and let's sort on the salary. We'll talk about Tony Finau. Tony Finau's performance here at Torrey Pines has been exceptional. Top 10. He did miss the cut in 2022. Runner-up, top 10, top 15. I mean, lots and lots of success here at Torrey. So this is quite a gamble that I'm taking. One, you can't play everybody, so you got to plant your flag somewhere. You see all of the success at Torrey, but he's not particularly putt well here. It's all been about the ball striking and particularly the irons. Look at how good his irons have been here at Torrey. If I remove the Farmers, he lost on ball striking at the American Express all across the board. Granted, it's only 2/10 and 3/10, but he lost strokes ball striking. He wasn't particularly good at the Century either, ball striking. That concerns me. Because here at the Farmers, you have to be in form ball striking, especially with your irons. And he's not at the moment. Maybe Torrey is his fix, but that is the flag that I'm planting this week in saying that I am off of Tony Finau. You can't play everybody. So I'm off of Tony Finau. That's my answer to the poll question. I am absolutely not using Tony Finau. Darnell and I had a little bit of a discussion last night on Sung Jae. Darnell has sworn off of Sung Jae. I'm actually going to go back to him a little bit. I'm not nearly as high as I was on him last week. Let's get that clear. But I'd still like Sung Jae a little bit this week, because if you look at Sung Jae, I should have stayed on that page view. My apologies. Because if you look at Sung Jae had one bad round last week. Remember, we don't get shot link from La Quinta, and we don't get shot link from the Nicklaus Tournament course. All of this is from his round at the Stadium course. But if you actually look at what he did the days that he wasn't at the Stadium course, Sung Jae, so he goes +5 at the Stadium course. I don't think people realize he shot 7 under at La Quinta, which good players should, but not everybody does. He went 7 under and 4 under. So he went 11 under the 2 days he wasn't at the Stadium course. He had a bad day. It happens. He had a bad ball striking day. He had a bad iron day. I mean, his off the tee game was pretty good at his day at the Stadium course. His irons were just bad. Now, if there were signs of that, maybe if he had lost more than he had coming into that, maybe he'd be worried. But, he'd gained a little bit at the Century. I mean, even in the FedEx Cup playoffs, he had gained. So it was just a bad day. Again, I'm not going crazy with it, but I'm going to make sure to have some Sung Jae in my lineups. Again, not going crazy with it, but I will go back to the well a little bit with that. Very good putter on Poa. Loves these long par fours. So I'm just thinking he had one bad iron day at the Stadium course that knocked him out of the tournament. And the Stadium course on that Thursday played over par. The rest of the week it played under par. So something about Thursday last week at the American Express, that Stadium course, made it the most difficult it was all week. That's my reasoning on backing Sung Jae a little bit this week. Hey, good evening, Pete. Thanks for jumping in chat. Much appreciated. Good to see you this evening. Hopefully you're ready for the Farmers on a short week. Getting into the price board and whatnot. But good to see you this evening. And then the other two players, like I'm just going to use. I can't get away from Obear or Hideki. I wish I could. I'll build some lineups without them. You know, obviously if I go to Sung Jae a little bit or if I build a balanced lineup. But it's really hard to ignore these two. Yes, they're chalky, but for good reason. Obear, top 10 this last year. Hideki has been pretty good historically at Torrey. So there's a lot to like here with these two. So in the 10Ks, going to use my fair share of these players. Can't get away from them. I will back Sung Jae a little bit. I just think he had one bad day last week. And I'm going to plant my flag. If Tony Finau plays well, and it's a dangerous game that I'm playing there, but I'll lose. I don't like where his ball striking has been at the Century, and especially last week at the Amex. Moving to the 9s, Keegan's, to my surprise, has played very, very well here, considering he does not putt Poa annua well at all. But you talk about ball striking and generally good long iron play. That's Keegan, so that part of it makes sense. I'll use some Keegan, especially because he is seemingly the pivot in the 9Ks or one of the pivots. But I don't want to go too overboard with it because there's a lot in the 9Ks I like. But I will dabble with some Keegan. We'll talk about Grazerman later in the picks. But as of right now, it seems like you got to have him. I mean, he's just putting up top 10 finish after top 10 finish. I keep expecting him to come back down to earth, and he just doesn't. he just doesn't. So, yeah. The player that I'm most excited about in the 9Ks, I think, is Will Zalatoris. Despite the fact that at least at Fantasy National he seems to be the most popular. The guy's been spectacular here. Made a note that he has averaged gaining one full shot or more in all four of the major strokes gained categories off the tee, approach, around the green, putting. He's averaged at least gaining one. That is very rare. He just loves this place. Again, a California native. The irons, I think, are better than this. I mean, again, remember, this is just from the Amex and the Century for him. Good putter on Poa. Yeah, I like Will Zalatoris a lot. I'm not afraid to go to Jason Day. I was completely off of him last week. So if anybody was brave enough to play him, kudos to you. But he's been pretty good at the Amex. He's also been pretty good here at the Farmers. So I won't be afraid to roster him. I would much rather go to Will Zalatoris. But if I'm trying to get some uniqueness, or if I don't have the 200 available to me, I don't mind using a Jason Day. You see how good the irons have been, and he's a top 10 putter on Poa annua. So, yeah. Tagala, kind of nervous about, but I'm going to make sure I roster him. California native, again, very good on Poa. But you see the irons in 2025. This is from the Century and from the Sony. They're pretty lackluster. He had made some big strides in the ball striking department in 2024, and at least in 2025 it hadn't come around. So Tagala worries me a little bit, but I'll make sure to have him. And then I don't want any part of Shane Lowry. He's been okay here, but hadn't played in 2025 on the PGA Tour. I know he's been over in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, all that DP World Tour stuff. I don't know where his game is, so I'm just going to avoid him. So yeah, in the 9s, I'll dabble some Keegan. I'll dabble some Sahith. I don't mind using some J-Day, but I'm going to try to get as much Zalatoris as I can. Moving to the 8s, love McNeely. Again, California guy. He's been very good here. Loves POA. Irons have been okay. A little chalky. Well, maybe not. I mean, he's not as chalky as Taylor Pendrith, but creeping up in that 13 to 15% projected ownership. It's a little high, but I like him. Pendrith, I can't get there with the ownership. I mean, this is still a fade. He's been very good here. The length is obvious. Plays long par 4s and par 5s well, and I get it. I do, but man, that's a lot of ownership. He's third or fourth most projected owned per Fantasy National. I like the player a lot. I'm not there with Taylor Pendrith this week. No thanks on Kitayama, despite the fact that he's a pretty good long iron player. He has just been a disaster on the greens at Torrey. So no thanks. Homa, number one player. I'm definitely going to use him. I'm hoping his ownership doesn't skyrocket. If I get 15% on Max Homa, I would be okay with it. You know, we obviously don't want we want as low as possible, but I think realistically, if we got 12 to 14% on Homa, we should be ecstatic. If we get upwards of 17 or 18, I wouldn't feel great about it. 15's fair, so I'm going to use fair share of Homa. Luke Clanton makes a lot of sense. The guy hits it a mile, generally pretty straight. But until we see him actually put up some numbers on POA, put up some good numbers in general, like that's why I was off of him at the Sony, or was it the Amex? Either one, and he missed the cut. I'll just let others take the chance on him. I would much rather play proven commodities like Aaron Rai. Coming to your point, Phil, I love Aaron Rai this week. He is getting some steam. He's about 11 to 12% per Fantasy National. I'm a little surprised considering the narrative around Torrey is that you have to have a lot of length, and Aaron Rai is not long by any means. One of the least in terms of driving distance. But the guy is such a good iron player. He has a top 5 or maybe a top 10 previously. Like, he's been pretty good at Torrey. So I'm with you, Phil. I don't know if I'll have 30% ownership in Rai, but I am definitely targeting or using Rai quite a bit. Like him a lot this week. Long irons, long par 4s, even these par 5s. Like, he's been pretty darn good. Thing is, he doesn't get a whole lot of birdies. He's just a bogey avoider, and that's why he's so good generally in around majors or in difficult courses like Torrey, like Bay Hill. When pars are good scores, Aaron Rai is generally pretty solid. So I like Aaron Rai quite a bit. Griffin rated out well. No thanks. He's struggled here. This is not a good course fit for Ben Griffin. Hostler is kind of intriguing, all about the putter at 8,000. I'll dabble, but I'm much more keen to look for Aaron Rai. So in the 8s, I love McNeely. I'm hoping his ownership stays, around what it's saying. I love Homa, but I think Homer will be pretty popular. I like Aaron Rai quite a bit. I'll use him a lot. I'll dabble some Hostler. Pendrith's a fade. I can't say it's a full fade. I'm sure I'll have him, but man, I'm not going to be 18% on Taylor Pendrith. I'll tell you that. I'll be more in the 5 to 10%. And no thanks on the rest of these guys. I mean, even Siwoo, as high as I was on Siwoo last week, very bad on POA. Drives it straighter than a narrow, so I mean, that's one thing. He shouldn't have to worry about being in the rough. I don't know. He's been okay here. A little foreshadowing, Gabe likes Siwoo. Yeah, I'm not nearly as high on it. Moving to the 7s, particularly the upper 7s. Sorry, getting something out of the way in the corner of my screen. Let's start with Thomas Dietrich. Love Thomas Dietrich. We're going to see him a lot tonight. Pick selection, betting card, all of that. The irons are a little suspect, or at least have been early on this year from the Century. He's been great on Poa annua. It's a very small sample size, but he's been great on Poa annua. I mean, distance is not a factor for him. He is one of the longer ones on tour. I really like Thomas Dietrich. I like the fit here. He's actually played okay here as well. So love Thomas Dietrich. I've heard a lot of good things about Mark Hubbard. Pretty unique. He's just not a very good putter. You don't have to be a great putter to win here. See Luke List. See John Rahm. John Rahm was never a great putter when he was on the PGA Tour. I don't know. Maybe worth a look, but I'm just so high on Dietrich that I haven't really spent much time here with Hubbard. Instead, I'll talk about your boy P. Probably against my better judgment, I'll probably use quite a bit of Doug Gim. His irons are not this bad. He's just had a couple of bad tournaments. Everyone remembers how hot he was during the fall, and everybody was playing him. He's coming to clearly his best surface. Doug Gim is not an abject failure on Poa annua. So you get him on his best surface, a good ball striker, a good iron player. Yeah, he doesn't have a lot of distance, but he's been okay around Torrey Pines. Not great, but okay. I think this could be I'm not going to pick Doug Gim to win, but I think this is a tournament that Doug Gim can perform well at. And an 8% owned, middling priced Doug Gim is pretty solid. I think he'd be pretty solid for you in your lineups. So in the upper sevens, I am all about some Thomas Dietrich and some Doug Gim. Like those two players a lot. Moving into the mid sevens, Justin Rose. Nothing analytically really stood out, and as I mentioned during the mixed condition model, he's one of these players that hadn't played on the PGA Tour in 2025. So that doesn't bode for a lot of success, or at least doesn't bode well for winning. But he's a former champion here. He's put Poa annua pretty well in the past. I'm mentioning Justin Rose for the course fit. He's been good here. Putts Poa. Generally keeps the ball in play. Don't overlook Justin Rose, and don't overlook Nicholas Norgard either. Another one of these DP World Tour players, much like Pavone and Victor Paris and others last year. He's one of the 10 that have been given PGA Tour status this year through the DP World Tour. This guy hits it a mile. Sometimes doesn't even keep it on the planet, but he hits it a mile. And you have to have some length to contend at Torrey. So if he actually does find a fairway or two, he's going to be dangerous. So keep an eye on Norgard. I don't think I'm going to use him in any of my lineups, but I wouldn't be surprised if he put up a good result based on the style of player he is. I mean, just unleashes off the tee. Rogers, California native, it's okay. I'll use a little bit of Patrick Rogers. He's probably a better putter on Poa annua than what this is saying. So it's fine. He just hadn't had a lot of great recent form. We'll get to Lonto in the 6Ks here momentarily. So Rogers is fine. Let's see. Elsewhere in the mid sevens, not really anywhere else in the mid sevens. Probably tells you the kind of lineups I'm building, but like Rose, I mentioned, Norgard is worthy of a look. Don't mind Rogers, and then the next player that I want to mention is in the low sevens at 73. So I'm not really much in the mid sevens. Instead, Sam Stevens. Love Sam Stevens this week. He's been pretty good at Torrey. Top 10 in irons so far early in 2025. It's early, not a lot of sample size, but also he's been good on Poa. So you get the combination of a good iron player, or at least a hot iron player, and good on Poa, hitting a lot of greens. Yeah, I like Sam Stevens a lot. 7%, low sevens. He's going to be all over my lineups this week, kind of the glue that's holding all of this together for me. Love Sam Stevens this week if he does not play well. He's the inverse of Finau. If Finau plays well, I'll lose. If Stevens does not play well, I will lose. I've got a lot of Sam Stevens. Take a look at Taylor Moore. Taylor Moore played very well last week. Another California guy, putts POA pretty well. The irons are sometimes, close your eyes and pray, but, it's worthy of a look at least. And then elsewhere in the low sevens, I'll casually mention the defending champion, Matthew Pavone. His irons aren't nearly as good or in form as they were last year coming into Torrey. This is just one tournament of putting, which was last year's Farmers, so I wouldn't get carried away with that. He is very good on par threes, which you have to be pretty good on par threes around Torrey to contend. So, I'm going to mention it, and I'm going to use him because he's 4% owned as the defending champion, but I wouldn't go crazy and expecting, like another top 10 or anything. I think he's just there as a potential option, especially off this Gary Woodland chalk. Look, I like Gary Woodland as much as the next guy. I think it's a great story off of his brain surgery and all. This is not the place for him. It's just not. Torrey is not the place for Gary Woodland. I will be surprised if he plays well. And this is an easy fade, full fade, because of the ownership. If he was 7-8%, it's worthy of a look. But at double that, at 14%, no thanks. The only other name that I want to casually mention in the sevens, and I'm only mentioning it very casually because he's an abject failure on POA, is Kevin Yu. This is an entirely a play on ball striking. Fourth and greens, par 5s he devours. Number 1 off the tee on long courses. This is a purely a ball striking play, and you hope he makes a putt, one singular putt during the week. I'm going to have him once, but he is really bad on POA. Woodland, the veteran of PGA Tour. That's pretty funny. He's getting steamed because people are probably thinking about, former, U.S. Open champion Gary Woodland, which was on POA at Pebble Beach. So it kind of makes some sense. He's long. He's generally pretty accurate. Makes sense conceptually for Torrey, but his ball flight is very low, very low. And he's not going to be able to hold a lot of these greens, I don't think. I know it's a middling number here, but I've got concerns with Gary Woodland. I would much rather play Gary Woodland where around the green really matters because he's very good around the green. I also would prefer Gary Woodland when bogeys don't hurt you, like in birdie fests. So, yeah. Like I said, if you like Woodland, I understand it. This is a complete ownership fade. 14% on a guy that's not really in form right now. No thanks. Moving to the sixes. I was going to casually mention Joseph Bramlett. He's at 12% per Fantasy National. Has not played in 2025. Much like Gary Woodland, you think about Joseph Bramlett, long iron player. You see the distance, 4th, off the tee, 14th. He's a big driver of the golf ball, generally pretty good iron player. He's a bad putter, but has been good on POA. So he's getting a lot of steam, at least per Fantasy National. Just be careful. Be careful because he has not played in 2025. I did want to mention him until I saw the ownership. I guess I'll switch Woodland out for Michael Kim. Didn't know he was getting so much. Again, this is per Fantasy National. So the members of Fantasy National seem to be gravitating towards Woodland. He might not be that highly owned. And to be honest, I don't think Bramlett's going to be 12% owned in our big GPPs. But he's probably not going to be as unique as you're thinking. Bramlett's probably going to sit at 7 to 8%. Woodland's probably going to sit at 10 to 12%. Just saying, these guys aren't as unique as you're hoping. So instead, in the 6Ks, there's actually 3 names I want to give you all. And Phil beat me to the punch on one of them. Let's talk about Lonto Griffin. Lonto Griffin, his irons don't look all that great. I'll give you that. We're going to go to Fantasy National. Lonto Griffin. Let's take a look at his Farmers. Sure, pretty middling here. He did have a top 10 a few years prior. Let me zoom out. What do you not really see other than this 1 year? He's been very good on these greens. Here at Torrey, he's been very good. In fact, he's been very good with having a terrible around the green game in 2021. He's not really ever been great ball striking here, yet he's still making the cut. You can see POA is by far his best surface. And then if you actually take a look at the Amex, he's actually been in form a little bit. He gained 1.5. He gained a half. I like Lonto Griffin quite a bit, especially because of that putter on POA. Like, for example, if we take a look at the Genesis. Look at the Genesis. Another course with POA. All positive. This guy loves putting on POA. So, yes, please on Lonto Griffin. I'm right there with you, or at least seemingly you were high on Lonto Griffin since you asked, Phil. I like Lonto quite a bit. He's been very good. He's sub 4%. 6,900 isn't going to break the bank, obviously. I like a lot here with Lonto Griffin. His irons will have to be better. He'll have to be much better around the green. But there is some hope here. There's some upside here with Lonto Griffin. The second name, other than the obvious, that I want to throw out at you is Kevin Tway. Kevin Tway has been fairly solid around Torrey Pines. He hasn't played in 2025. That's a big asterisk or something to be wary about. But he's also been pretty good on POA. Hits tons of greens, especially on long courses. It's worth a look at 6,400. Not saying to go crazy with it and put him in every single lineup, but like second in bogey avoidance on long courses, second in 3-putt avoidance on POA. There is reason to be optimistic about Kevin Tway. So at 6,400, especially if you're trying to get really greedy up top, it's worth a look if you need a lot of price savings. But everybody can probably figure out who I'm going to most suggest. It's Nate Lashley, top 10 in my rankings, sub 4%, finished third here last year, like Jake Knapp, but the irons are in form, top 10 putter on POA, fourth in par threes. A lot to like here with Nate Lashley. So I'm going to be using quite a bit of Nate Lashley in my lineups this week. So there's a look at the price board. Let's start building some lineups. We're already pushing time. Let's build some lineups, and then as we are going to for all of 2025 and hopefully moving forward, because I've enjoyed it, we'll reveal the picks. Tiers contest for those who play tiers. Tier 1, Obear, Hideki, Tony Finau. Choose one. It's clearly not Tony Finau for me. If I have to pick one, I'll pick Obear, but really it's 1A and 1B for me. I'll take Obear, but if you take Hideki, I don't blame you. Tier 2, Sungjae, Keegan, Grazerman, Zalatoris, and Tagala. Give me Will Z. He might be the most popular in the tier, but that's fine. I just have more confidence in him than I do a Keegan. I have more confidence in him than a Sungjae after last week. So give me Will Zalatoris in Tier 2. Tier 3, J-Day, Lowry, McNeely, Pendrith, Homa. I want to take Homa, but he's probably going to be the most owned in the tier again. McNeely might not be a bad play. I don't mind that one. Day's also fine. But it's really hard for me not to go with my number one player in my rankings. So I'll take Homa, not in love with it because I'm thinking I'm probably pretty chalky with this tiers lineup already. But I'll go Homa in tier 3. Tier 4, Kiriyama, Clanton, Siwoo, Ryan, Griffin. Aaron Rye, don't care. I don't want any part of any of these other 4. So give me Aaron Rye in tier 4. 5, Hostler, Dietrich, Spawn, Hubbard, Yeager, Gim, and Eckroat. Gim could be interesting, but I'm going to pick Thomas Dietrich. And then tier 6, Frankie Sapan, McGreevy, Highsmith, Novak, Norlander, Putnam, and Hodges. Novak, maybe. Highsmith hasn't been bad here, but it's only one time. If you're not afraid of players who are first-time starters at Torrey, Frankie Sapan's got a lot of talent. Really, tier 6 is a kind of a toss-up. I don't like anybody all that much in this tier. I guess I'll take Frankie Sapan and play on the talent. So this tier's construction goes tier 1, I'll take Aubert. Tier 2, I'll take Will Zalatoris. Tier 3 will be Max Homa. Tier 4 will be Aaron Rye. Tier 5 is Dietrich. Tier 6 is Frankie Sapan. McGreevy, I mean, he's better than what he was the first go-around on the PGA Tour. But, I mean, he was almost DFL, I think, 2 or 3 years ago here at the Farmers. Wasn't particularly very good. If you have a strong feeling on it, on a tiers contest, go ahead. I don't have any strong feeling in tier 6. So if that's who you're leaning, I don't hate it. I don't mind it because I don't really feel strongly about anybody in tier 6. All right, let's start building some lineups. We'll start with trying to figure out what our fellow contestants are doing, and then we'll see if we can't try to build some uniqueness off of them. And of course, if you haven't answered the poll question, I ask that you go ahead and fill that out. Right now, it's a pretty even split between 3 of the players. So again, if you're watching, I ask that you fill that out. Have some fun interaction with that. All right, we're going to start these lineups with the most projected owned player, which is Ludwig Aubert. And depending on the style of lineup that you think your fellow contestants are building, they're either bottoming out at Gary Woodland or they're actually going into the 6Ks for Bramlett. I'm going to use Bramlett just because he's, above 10% as a 6K, signifying that he's getting used quite a bit. This very well could be Gary Woodland, but starting with Ludwig Aubert, don't think our fellow contestants are going to be able to go Hideki. Will Zalatoris is probably too much as well. So really, it's looking like an Aubert and then Taylor Pendrith. And then coming down to the 8s, Max Homa, Rye getting a little bit as well, but it's probably Max Homa. Here's what Optimizer's kicking out. Decky, I'm assuming is that Ben Griffin or Lonto Griffin? Oh, both Griffins. Sorry. Helps to read the whole sentence. Decky, Griffin, Rye, Spawn, Vegas, Cole, Decky, Pendrith, or is that has to be Ben Griffin considering where you've put him in the price? Yeah, Ben. And I'm not there with Ben Griffin this week. Ugh. I know he rated out close to my top 30, but he has been bad here. Not a good putter on POA. I know he's in great form right now. This does not feel like a good Ben Griffin course. He's been good at par 3s, but the off the tee is bad. It's bad, especially on long courses when he has to hit driver. You think about his top finishes, the Bermuda. In fact, let's go to Fantasy National just very quickly. Ben Griffin at 81. His top finishes are RBC Canadian, that was not a long course. Sanderson Farms is. Butterfield Bermuda's not. Wyndham is not. John Deere is not. Amex is not. All of these courses do not force you to put driver in your hand, other than maybe the Sanderson Farms. But you see, like, he wasn't good off the tee there. It was all about his irons and his putting that week. All of these top finishes are at short courses. This is not a Ben Griffin fit. So I don't know if there's anybody else you like around his price, but I strongly do not recommend Ben Griffin this week. Let's see. Finishing out this lineup here, looks like they have our fellow contestants would have room for maybe like an upper 7 and a low 7. Very well could put Gary Woodland in this lineup. Yeah, 77. Like Jaeger at 78. Thorbjornsen's also getting some love. Look, I understand this is 100 over. I'm just trying to give you an idea of what these lineups are doing. Yeah, in fact, maybe if they just come off of Oberg to Hideki, like, you're at close to 90%. It's not horrible, but this is going to be duplicated quite a bit, especially if you're banking on Joseph Bramlett, Gary Woodland, down in the 6s and 7s. I think these lineups are going to get duplicated quite a bit. Taylor Pendrith, very popular. Somebody else I'm not really all that high on. These are the kind of lineups that these stars and scrubs builds that seem to be pretty popular. If our fellow contestants are going balanced, looks like they're going to start with Willie Z. Again, this would be Pendrith. I'm going to try to use some different names here. Maybe they can go Jason Day. Let's do McNeely. He's getting a decent amount of love. Luke Clanton, somebody I'm not in on as well, would definitely be a fit in this kind of balanced build. Again, this is Rye, Jaeger, 7,000. This would be Bramlett. I didn't want to go that much, so maybe this is Jaeger, Thorbjornsen, Trey Mullinax. That is a name that I haven't heard in a long time. Oh, sorry. No. Well, this leaves quite a bit on the table, but I'm just trying to put in high ownership amounts. Like, this would be the look of a balanced build. Sub players here and there, like Max Homa's probably in here somewhere. They're bottoming out at Gary Woodland. Jaeger's getting some. Aaron Rye's in here. Like, it looks like ownership's getting concentrated in a few spots down low, as in Gary Woodland, Bramlett, Thorbjornsen, and then at least members of Fantasy National are kind of scattershotting the upper portion. That's what it seems like. Just very quickly, Trey Mullinax. Like, I won at Altfield GBB years ago on the back of Mullinax. I mean, I've certainly pushed Mullinax a time or two in different tournaments. Doesn't usually work out well for me. I just don't see much here. He's got a lot of ball striking, but I believe he's coming off injury. Hasn't played 2025. I would wait to see where his game is before jumping in on that. But that's just me. I would much rather go with some proven commodities. Because Mullinax won the Barbasol. Was it last year or 2 years ago? And I was really high on him that week. I don't think I had the outright on him. Maybe I did. I've hit the Barbasol a couple times, but anyway, I just can't. I if I knew where his game was, maybe. I just would prefer, other proven commodities, like we know where their game is. Did he play the Amex? He might have. I feel like he was coming off of injury. But maybe that was, last year. He did play the Amex. Good catch. I mean, everything was good last week, I suppose. Molinax, I would venture to say this was probably his stadium course. No. So he only went -1 at La Quinta. Wow. He played the stadium course first and went 3 under, 4 under. Okay. Wow. Color me surprised. That's something I didn't realize. Like, you see, he had no form in the fall. Again, I can't get there, but this gives me a little bit more confidence in it. Sure. If you're wanting to get off some of the chalk in the 6K, okay. Like I said, I'm going to go with the guys that I named, but I don't hate it. Couldn't hurt, I suppose. So speaking of those 6Ks, how are we going to maneuver around what seems to be some of the chalk? And I'm going to try to do this fairly quickly because we still have to do the picks, and I try to keep these shows at an hour, and it's going long. All right. Well, the first thing you can do is you can build a balanced lineup and just ignore the 10Ks. That's a very, very bold thing to do, considering Ludwig and Hideki seem like very obvious plays. But you can do it. I'm not necessarily there on Keegan. I would probably start my lineups with Will Zalatoris as well, even though he's so popular. But just to highlight some uniqueness, why don't we start with Jason Day? Jason Day's been very good here. Great putter on Poa annua. Nothing wrong with that. Pivot off of Will Z and probably Tagala in the nines. Start your balanced lineups with Jason Day. Move down into the 8s. I would still probably prefer Max Homa. Mav McNeely's not getting a ton of ownership. You can go Day, McNeely. You could probably squeeze Homa into this. Aaron Rye could also be a fit. Bo Hostler is somebody else. I'm going to go with Aaron Rye. Thomas Dietrich, somebody I'm really, really high on. You still have 7,800 per player. Like, maybe you like a Stefan Jaeger. I'll throw in P's guy, Doug Ginn. 7,700. Finish this out with another, play on the course fit. Former champion, Justin Rose. There's a balanced look at 60%, 65% cumulative ownership. You might get duplicated once or twice, but I mean, Gim and Rose are pretty darn unique. Pivot off of the Will Z and Sahit Tagala chalk. Like, this lineup would be, pretty competitive, I would think. And you're probably going to be unique in the style of lineup because it seems like most of our fellow contestants are going stars and scrubs. So that's the first way you can combat all of this up here in the top is just ignore it. Just simply get rid of it. It's bold. If you have the stones to do it, might not work out, but if it does, you're going to be that much more ahead of everybody else, all your other fellow contestants. So that's one way to do it. The other way is to try to beat them, finding your own, little unique ownerships. So I will go ahead and start this lineup with Ludwig. If you're high on Hideki, sure. As I mentioned, I won't hesitate to throw in a Sungjae in a lineup or two either. If you had to pick Siwoo or Clanton, who would you choose? Siwoo, known commodity. Clanton's a known commodity, yes, but he is not putt on Poa annua. Siwoo's actually been okay around Torrey. He's also devoured par 5, so I would take Siwoo. Also helps that he's half the ownership if I had to choose just between those two. But I would mostly go Rye over those of those, I would go Rye. It seems like Rye is less owned than Clanton, or at least in the same ballpark. But of just those two, I would go Siwoo. If we're going to go to Obear, again, I'm going to go with Nate Lashley in the 6Ks to highlight, the uniqueness here. Pick your 6K of choice. Maybe it's Trey Mullinax. Maybe it's Kevin Tway. Just don't do Joseph Bramlett. He's not going to be... Bramlett's not going to be nearly as unique as you're hoping. Hey, thanks, P. Thanks for being in chat this evening. Good luck to you this week. Much appreciated. And then, like, if you really, really wanted to get greedy here, like, you could go J-Day, you could go Sahith Theegala. You still have enough here in the low sevens that you don't have to double dip the sixes. I gave you the name Pavone, defending champion. I like Sam Stevens quite a bit. And then you can fill out the rest, these other two however you want. Maybe you kind of go extreme stars and scrubs where you throw in a Max Homa. And then, settle on your mid-7 of choice. Maybe it's Patrick Rogers. Maybe it's Johnny Vegas, Thorbjornsen. In fact, like if I drop off of Theegala to McNeely, this gives me 77 for Doug Gim, for Justin Rose, for Nicholas Norgard, who could be quite interesting this week. Moeller. So there's the two approaches that you can go about it. The bold way to do it is the balance lineups. Kind of ignoring everything up here. You might be able to get away with a Will Zalatoris, but like if you started with Jason Day and then worked your way down, you're going to skip a whole lot of ownership. Or the second way, try to beat them. I would use Ludwig. That was my preference. Hideki I'll use some too. And then make sure you have some uniqueness in the sixes and low sevens. That's why I highlighted Nate Lashley. Nate Lashley at 67. Lonto Griffin, 6,900. Chat has talked about Trey Mullinax. I actually don't mind Hayden Springer at 66 either. It's just he hadn't played in 2025, but he was very good in the fall. Berger is quite a bit lower owned than Woodland. At least per Fantasy National. Berger, I just saw him. He's at 7.5%. Woodland, at least per Fantasy National, is 13.5. So at least per Fantasy National, you would go Berger in that case if it was an ownership play. All right, going quite a bit over. Let's go to the picks. In fact, I need to change this very, very quickly. Apologies, Farmers, and then yikes. I apologize. I thought I had this fixed and I didn't. Sorry, I still had Amex up there at the top. All right, pick selection. Gabe has taken a 1-point lead on me after my disaster of an Amex. So I'm going to try and correct that this week. My winner is Thomas Dietrich. I'm going to go out on a little bit of a limb. I really like Thomas Dietrich. I like the course fit here. He's putted so very well on Poa Annua. Taking a little bit of a shot here, but really like Thomas Dietrich. Gabe's going to go with Ludwig Aubert. Absolutely nothing wrong with that selection. Tournament favorite for good reason. Our favorite plays, Gabe's going to go with Siwoo. I'm not necessarily there, although I can understand it. I like Sam Stevens in the low sevens. Low owned. Has played very well around Torrey. So a little bit, I'm going a little bit more unique, a little bit more out on a limb, but definitely not without the risk. Gabe's going to fade Stefan Jaeger. I'm going to fade Tony Finau. So obviously my answer to the poll question, I said it once, but I'll do it again. I am completely fading Tony Finau. Please let me know if you all are seeing this. I got a notification that OBS had disconnected, so I'm hoping we're still here. But just to recap quickly, I love Gabe's choice of Lonto Griffin, and then Nate Lashley for me. Sorry about that. For some reason, OBS just kind of paused or crashed. My streaming software. Fear of missing out. Gabe's going to go with Taylor Pendrith, who seems like he should fit this course. I just don't like the ownership. I'm going to go with Max Grazerman. Guy has been putting the daylights out for seemingly months now. I keep expecting that to change, for him to come back down to earth. It hasn't yet, so I'm just going to keep riding literally the hot hand. And then our wild card for the week, there's been a lot of narratives, but we settled on Top Californian. That's a big narrative for Torrey Pines this week. Gabe's going to go with Sahith Theegala. I'm going to go with Will Zalatoris. If you want to see our write-ups and our reasoning for the choices that we made, Gabe has posted that over on his social media, over on X. So make sure you give him a follow while you're over there. You'll see our explanations to our picks. But thanks to Phil and to P for jumping in chat. Very much appreciated. Thanks to everyone else out there who tunes in, watches, listens, supports the channel by liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. I always appreciate it. Love what I do, taking a very in-depth look at sports statistics, golf statistics mainly, but sports statistics, giving you a statistician's view of what he sees, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process. We're going to try and improve on that after last week's disaster at the American Express for the Farmers. So thanks again for all the support, for all the wagers you have made this week for the Farmers, for all the DFS contests you play this week for the Farmers, for this weekend and every weekend. May all your bets be profitable.